Gynecologist, what's the worst thing you've ever seen? Bon appetit. A gynecologist here. Sometimes I deal with unpleasant cases, like girls who wear the same tampon for days or even weeks. Necrotic vaginal cancer doesn't look great either, but none of that comes close to the worst case I've ever encountered. One time, a 19-year-old girl came into our clinic complaining that she had a hairspray cap stuck in her vagina. Not a big deal, I thought naively, until she told us it had been in there since she was 15. That's 4 years. She never really explained why she did it, just that she was incredibly embarrassed. Even before she undressed, the smell was horrific, and only got worse when I started examining her. The cap was lodged with the rim facing up, and by then it was thoroughly embedded in vaginal tissue. To make matters worse, the cap had punctured both her bladder and rectum. We had to do several extensive surgeries to get it out. I'm not a gynecologist, but I know someone who recently had a hysterectomy, removal of the uterus. She had stitches inside the vaginal canal and was told to let them heal. But she just couldn't wait to resume her sex life, lost control, and ended up tearing the surgical site open. Her small intestine literally slipped out of her vagina. They told me this story in such graphic detail, I don't think I'll ever be able to eat ground meat again. According to her, during the emergency ride to the hospital, she could feel her intestine lying on her leg and pulsating. Can I delete someone else's comment, please? I had a friend in high school who was absolutely terrified of going to the gynecologist. When she finally worked up the courage to go in for her first pap smear, she got so tense she accidentally locked the doctor's head between her thighs like a vice. Apparently, it took a while for her to calm down enough to let go. Super awkward. She laughs about it now, but she's still really shy about anything to do with her lady parts. She doesn't even like using tampons. I'm a med student, and once I signed up to assist with a hysterectomy, we were told it was for a small ovarian cancer. Turned out to be way worse. Her entire abdominal cavity was riddled with metastases. We ended up spending 13 hours just doing debulking surgery, even though the entire operation was supposed to take about 3 hours. At some points, general surgeons and vascular specialists had to step in to help. Real medicine ain't for the squeamish. We had to replace half of the patient's blood volume. After everything she went through, she was in very poor shape. Her post-operative recovery was long and extremely difficult, but somehow she pulled through and eventually made it back home to her family. It was a draining case for everyone involved, but the patient and her family were such wonderful people. It was truly an honor to help them. I'm not a gynecologist, but I do perform exams occasionally. One time, I removed a tampon that had been inside for at least a month. The craziest part? The woman had been sexually active the entire time. The stench was unbelievable, apocalyptic even. After she left, it took hours to air out the room. We all just wandered around the clinic trying not to throw up. My dad once told me about a woman who was severely addicted to heroin. For some unknown reason, she decided to inject it directly into her labia. It caused gangrene. Safe to say, that was not worth it. Bit late to the party, but I'm a med student, soon to be a full-fledged doctor, though not a gynecologist exactly. When I did my OB/GYN rotation, they sent me in to examine this one girl. As I was preparing for the exam, the smell in the room was so overpowering that I braced myself for what I assumed would be the worst case of bacterial vaginosis I had ever encountered. I go in, start examining, but to my surprise, there's nothing unusual. No discharge, no obvious infection. Strange. Jumped up, my rich, then as I start to pull back, the smell gets worse. Turns out it wasn't coming from down there at all. Her feet just smelled absolutely horrific. Mystery solved. I highly recommend the book, What's Up Down There, by Dr. Lissa Rankin. There's a section where she talks about the worst cases of her entire career. Things like maggots, money, and other horrifying finds. But that's not even the craziest one. The wildest case? A woman who had a potato growing in her vagina. Yes, you read that right. She had inserted a potato as a form of birth control. But since potatoes love warm, dark, and moist environments, it started sprouting. She came in with potato vines literally growing out of her. Okay, not a vaginal story. This one's about breasts, but it's just as disgusting. Back in high school, I joined a student program that placed teens in hospital internships. I chose to help out in the emergency department. One day, they brought in a very obese woman complaining of chest pain. Everyone immediately noticed the horrible stench coming from her, so the attending doctor decided to wash her down a bit before beginning the exam. The doctor starts washing her, lifts one of her breasts, and suddenly the smell hits us like a brick wall. We were all nearly knocked out cold. Under her breast was some sort of colorless crust, like scaly dermatitis. As the doctor washed it, the scab peeled off and revealed a small hole, from which cockroaches started crawling out. Most likely, she'd had eggs laid in the fold beneath her breast. When they hatched, the roaches couldn't find a way out, so they literally chewed their way to freedom. My mom once told me what I still consider the grossest medical story I've ever heard. A woman in her 50s, severely obese, around 500 pounds, 227 kilograms, came in. She said her husband noticed a strange smell during sex. Turns out everyone in the hospital could smell it, not just the husband. I don't remember every medical detail, but long story short, her entire vaginal area was necrotic. Surgical intervention was attempted, but it didn't help. She died shortly after. The darkly hilarious part of this story? Her husband noticed the putrid smell first, and he noticed it while having sex with her. I'm not a gynecologist either, but I've seen some awful stuff. One case, a woman had vaginal cancer, and I saw her again after the complete removal of the vagina and cervix. I was a young med student then, and didn't understand all the procedures. But what remained was just a large, hollow cavity, dripping some kind of discharge. The poor woman was so emotionally destroyed that she begged her husband to leave her, saying, "After this, you'll never be able to love me again." But the guy was a true hero. He stayed with her every moment, holding her hand, comforting her. You could tell he absolutely adored her. Another case, a woman weighing around 220 kilograms, 485 pounds, came in, paralyzed from the waist down. She had a massive ulcer and necrotizing fasciitis that had basically devoured her genitals and buttocks. There were erosions in the rectum, which we figured out when feces began leaking from multiple open wounds. When the doctors asked us to collect a urine sample, we discovered she no longer had a bladder or a vagina. The team decided to try patching her up somehow. It took 6 people just to roll her onto her side, and then we started packing huge amounts of gauze into this enormous hole, praying she wouldn't defecate during the procedure. She died very quickly after that. In cases like these, there's nothing we can do. I feel so sorry for the first girl. I hope she's happy now. I feel bad for everyone in this thread, including the readers. I'm not a gynecologist, but I was born with a defect I didn't even notice until I started using tampons. Basically, I had a vaginal septum, which meant I had 2 openings instead of 1. I only realized there was a problem when I once tried to remove a tampon, unsuccessfully. I had inserted it through one hole but was trying to pull it out through the other, smaller one. It got stuck. The pain was awful and I couldn't do anything about it. Luckily, my mom was nearby. At first, she thought I was just an idiot who didn't know how to remove a tampon, but once she understood what was going on, she took me to the gynecologist. I had surgery and everything's fine now. I'm not a gynecologist either, but while working in the ER, I once saw something wild. An elderly woman was brought in after a fall. During the exam, we discovered she had a massive vaginal tumor. Her pelvis looked like someone had glued 2/3 of a football to it. The tumor was so big it was compressing the nerves in her left leg and cutting off circulation. That's likely why she fell. What happened to her later? I don't know. She was still being treated when I left. Hopefully she ended up in hospice. With a tumor that size at 80, there's no point in chemo, radiation, or surgery. I'm a nurse in a gynecology ward. Strangely enough, we rarely see really horrific cases. Women here tend to be quite meticulous about their vaginal health. And honestly, the vagina is an incredibly resilient organ. It can survive a lot of mistreatment. The worst case we had was a woman who came in for a hysterectomy. At the very beginning of the operation, the surgeon accidentally nicked her bowel. They decided to stop the procedure so the bowel could heal first. But things didn't go as planned. It didn't heal. Eventually, the bowel fused with the surgical wound on her abdomen, and a fistula formed. Basically, feces started leaking through the wound. And let me tell you, wounds that leak feces don't heal easily. She ended up staying in the hospital for 9 months, going through countless infections, wound ruptures, and dressing changes that lasted hours. At one point, her wound was so huge you could easily fit both of my fists inside. In the end, she had to get a permanent colostomy, a poop bag. And according to the last update I heard, they never even managed to remove her uterus. Well, after reading all your stories, I'll never again feel embarrassed about not shaving my legs or bikini line before a gynecologist appointment. A couple of years ago, my friend was doing his OB/GYN internship. One day, a young woman came in with two complaints. The first complaint, she couldn't get pregnant. The second, she had constant diarrhea. The gynecologist asks, "How often do you have anal sex?" She replies, "Always." Turns out her boyfriend had convinced her that it's easier to get pregnant through the back door than the front. So she asked him to only go in from behind. A story from my gynecologist friend. A girl comes in for a checkup, gets up on the chair, and my friend starts the exam, fingers her all the way to the cervix. Right then she asks, "Have you ever thought about how much this feels like stuffing a turkey?" My friend, trying to keep a straight face, "No, but now I will, every Thanksgiving." The patient bursts out laughing, then looks him straight in the eyes and starts clucking like a turkey, while his fingers are still inside her. My favorite Thanksgiving story ever. My grandma worked as a nurse in a gynecology department for 20 years. One day she stormed into the house furious, shouting, "If I ever have to look at one more vagina, I swear I'll kill someone," all while smashing the dishes. She quit her job the very next day. My mom works as a gynecologist's assistant, so I've heard my fair share of stories. Once, a woman came in, smelling like an actual dumpster. Turns out she had been wearing the same underwear for 2 months. They were a dark yellowish brown. Apparently, no one ever told her that you're supposed to wipe your butt. My first gynecologist visit was weird as hell. I was super nervous, and I got this old lady doctor who definitely noticed. Trying to ease the tension, she said, "Well, at least you didn't get a male gyno. Their fingers are like big sausages." Then she stuck her old granny fingers in me. Thanks, I guess. Thanks for watching. If you're a gynecologist, drop your worst horror story in the comments below. And don't forget to check out our other videos. Oh, and by the way, bon appetit.